Lovely viewers, today's story is one that will warm your heart from the very first line. So make yourself comfortable, maybe grab a cup of tea, and imagine stepping right into the quiet, golden glow of a morning that changed everything for Lee Min-ho and Hye Kyo. This is not just about breakfast. This is about the kind of love that sneaks up on you in the simplest of moments. The kind where a cup of tea, a perfectly folded omelette, and a soft smile across the table can make someone fall even deeper in love than they thought possible. It began on a morning when the world outside was still half asleep. The curtains in their home swayed gently in the cool breeze, and the faint sound of birds outside was the only reminder that the day had begun. Inside, the house was wrapped in a comfortable silence, broken only by the gentle clink of dishes and the soft hum of Hye Kyo moving about in the kitchen. She was wearing one of his shirts, slightly oversized, sleeves rolled up, hair loosely tied, and there was an ease to her movements, the kind of natural beauty that isn't rehearsed for cameras. The night before, she had made up her mind that she wanted to do something special for him. Not because it was his birthday, not because there was an occasion, but simply because she wanted him to wake up to the kind of love that you could taste. She remembered every little detail from their past conversations. How he once told her he loved omelets with just the right balance of vegetables and cheese, how he missed his mother's warm congee on cold mornings, and how pancakes drizzled with honey reminded him of a trip they once took to Jeju Island. These weren't random food choices. They were pieces of him, and she was about to put them together into something unforgettable. She began with the omelette. The eggs were whisked until frothy, a touch of milk added for creaminess. She sautéed finely chopped bell peppers, onions, and a bit of spinach until they softened, releasing an aroma that instantly filled the kitchen. As the eggs hit the hot pan, the sizzle was almost like a promise of how good this breakfast was going to be. She sprinkled cheese over the vegetables, folding it with precision so it held together perfectly. She smiled to herself, imagining the look on his face when he took that first bite. Next came the congee, slow-cooked rice in a broth she had prepared the night before. The grains were soft and silky, the texture just right, and she seasoned it with a delicate hand, adding a little ginger for warmth. She knew he sometimes preferred simple, soothing flavors in the morning, especially on days when he had busy schedules ahead. Beside the congee, she prepared small side dishes, pickled radish, seasoned spinach, and a few strips of seaweed, each arranged with care. Finally, the pancakes. She remembered how he had laughed on that trip to Jeju, saying he'd never tasted pancakes with honey that good, and how he wanted to recreate that memory one day. So she whisked the batter until it was smooth, poured it onto the griddle in perfect circles, and watched them puff up. When they were golden, she stacked them neatly, drizzled pure honey over the top, and added fresh berries for a burst of color. Meanwhile, upstairs, Lee Min-ho was slowly waking up. He noticed something different in the air, the warm, comforting scent drifting into the bedroom. Still a little drowsy, he followed it downstairs, and that's when he saw her. The sight stopped him for a moment. There she was, back turned to him, focused entirely on plating the food, with sunlight spilling in from the window, making her look almost unreal. He didn't say anything at first. Instead, he just watched her. The way her hands moved gently, the way she tilted her head slightly as if considering whether the presentation was perfect enough for him. And in that silent moment, he felt an overwhelming wave of affection. When she finally turned and saw him leaning against the doorframe, her eyes lit up, and that smile, the one she saved just for him, spread across her face. "You're awake," she said softly, almost as if she didn't want to break the calm of the morning. "I woke up to the best smell in the world," he replied, walking over to the table. She poured him a cup of tea, the steam curling into the air, and set the plates down in front of him. The omelette looked like something from a five-star cafe. The congee was warm and inviting, and the pancakes were a vision of golden perfection. But it wasn't just about how they looked. It was about the fact that every single thing had been chosen for him. The first bite of the omelette made him pause. It was soft, cheesy, and full of the kind of comfort that wrapped around his heart. The congee was exactly the kind of soothing start to the day he loved, and the pancakes. Oh, the pancakes tasted like that happy afternoon in Jeju, sweet and light. Between bites, they talked about everything and nothing. Childhood stories, silly inside jokes, and little things they had never told anyone else. At one point, he noticed a smudge of flour on her cheek and reached out to wipe it away, his thumb lingering just a second longer than necessary. "You're dangerous, you know," he said with a grin. "You make it too easy for me to fall for you." She laughed, shaking her head. "It's just breakfast." But he knew better. It wasn't just breakfast. It was thoughtfulness, attention, love disguised as a morning meal. It was the quiet way she remembered the details of his life, the way she wanted to make him feel cared for without any reason at all. When they finished, he didn't move right away. Instead, he sat there, holding her hand across the table, as if sealing the moment in his mind. "You've ruined me," he said finally. "Nothing else I eat will ever be as good as this." That morning became one of those rare memories that stayed with them, not because of what was said or done, but because of how it felt. And for Lee Min-ho, it was the kind of morning that made him fall just a little deeper, proof that love often speaks loudest in the smallest, quietest ways. Lovely viewers, lean in closer because this love story is just beginning to simmer. And like any truly good meal, the flavors take time to develop. We're about to step deeper into that morning when a simple breakfast became a turning point, when Song Hye Kyo's quiet gestures and Lee Min-ho's heartfelt reactions created something so intimate that it still lingers in their minds. This is not just about eggs, honey, or tea. This is about the kind of love that unfolds slowly, like steam rising from a freshly poured cup. After that first round of omelette, congee, and pancakes, Lee Min-ho didn't just push his chair back. No, he leaned back instead, fork still in hand, eyes fixed on her as though trying to memorize every detail. The way her hair framed her face even in its messy morning tie, the soft blush in her cheeks from the kitchen's warmth, and that faint trace of honey she didn't know had dripped onto her wrist. For him, this wasn't just seeing her. This was watching home in human form. Song Hye Kyo, oblivious to the way he was staring, moved to refill his tea. But when she placed the teapot down, he caught her hand mid-motion. "Stay here a second," he said, his voice lower than usual. She tilted her head, curious, as he gently turned her wrist and brushed his thumb over that little streak of honey. Without thinking, he raised it to his lips and tasted it, his eyes never leaving hers. "Sweet," he murmured, and she knew he wasn't talking about the honey anymore. Her heart skipped, but she quickly covered it with a playful, "You could have just told me it was there instead of making it dramatic." He grinned in that way only he could, that slow, dangerous grin that made her stomach flutter, and replied, "Where's the fun in that?" As they continued eating, the conversation drifted effortlessly between teasing banter and quiet, meaningful exchanges. He told her about a dream he had last night, something ridiculous involving them running a cafe by the sea, and she laughed so hard she nearly spilled her tea. But then she confessed something more vulnerable. That mornings like this scared her a little, because they felt so perfect, and she was afraid perfection couldn't last. Lee Min-ho's fork stilled. He reached across the table again, taking her hand fully this time, his thumb tracing slow circles on her skin. "Maybe perfection doesn't last," he said softly, "but the way I feel about you isn't about perfect moments. It's about all the moments, even the messy ones. Especially the messy ones." She didn't reply right away, but the way her fingers tightened slightly around his spoke volumes. Once they'd eaten enough to satisfy their stomachs, she tried to clear the plates, but he stopped her. "You cooked, I'll clean," he insisted, but she was already stacking dishes. This led to a playful standoff in the kitchen, each trying to take over the other's task. At one point, they both reached for the same plate, and their hands collided, sending a little splash of tea onto the counter. She gasped, and he just chuckled, grabbing a towel. "See," he said, wiping it up. "Messy moments. I like them too." Then, something unexpected happened. He went to rinse the dishes, but instead of starting the tap, he turned around and pulled her gently toward him. The kitchen fell into silence except for the faint sound of the breeze outside and the slow rhythm of their breathing. "I don't want this morning to end," he admitted. She felt the sincerity in his voice, and it made her chest tighten in the best way. "Then don't let it," she whispered back. So they didn't rush. They stayed in the kitchen long after the plates were clean, sitting on the counter together, legs brushing, talking about everything they'd do if they ever took that cafe dream seriously. He'd be the one making coffee, she'd handle the breakfast menu, and they'd argue over music playlists but always end up laughing. The image became so vivid in their minds that it didn't feel like a fantasy. It felt like a quiet promise neither of them dared to put into words yet. As the morning stretched into late morning, the sunlight grew warmer, spilling across the kitchen floor in golden patches. Lee Min-ho took out his phone, not to check messages, but to snap a candid photo of her as she sipped the last of her tea, sunlight catching in her hair. She noticed and tried to hide her face, but he lowered the phone just enough to meet her eyes. "I want to remember you exactly like this," he said. For her, that might have been the real moment. Not the food, not the honey on her wrist, but the way he looked at her as though nothing else in the world mattered. For him, the memory of that morning became a secret treasure, a quiet story he would carry and think about whenever he was far away from her. And though neither said it out loud, they both knew. Breakfast had become more than a meal. It was a little piece of their love story, cooked and served in a way that no one else could ever replicate. If you're reading this, lovely viewers, you know that sometimes love isn't in the grand proposals or the extravagant gifts. It's in the morning light, the way someone remembers how you take your tea, the way they fold an omelette because they know that's how you like it. And for Lee Min-ho and Hye Kyo, this breakfast was a reminder that the simplest gestures often carry the deepest meaning, the kind of meaning that makes a person fall and keep falling over and over again. What happened next was where the magic truly deepened, where every tiny gesture began weaving into a memory neither Hye Kyo nor Lee Min-ho would ever forget. Because after the dishes were done, after the teacups were empty, and after that playful argument over who would clean up, the morning refused to let them go. It was as if the day itself was conspiring to stretch their time together, holding them in that little bubble of love and comfort. Lee Min-ho glanced toward the living room, then back at her. "You know," he began, "it feels wrong to just move on with the day. We should celebrate this breakfast somehow." She raised an eyebrow, curious. "Celebrate breakfast? Are we making it an official holiday now?" "Why not?" he said with a mischievous grin. "We can call it Breakfast in Love Day. It's simple. You cook, I fall even harder for you." She laughed, shaking her head at how ridiculously sweet he could be without even trying. "If we celebrate every time you fall harder, we're going to run out of days in the year," she teased. He took a step closer, the playful look in his eyes softening into something more tender. "Then maybe we'll just have to make it a daily thing." That sentence hung in the air for a moment, the sincerity behind it making her heart skip. He reached for her hand again, and instead of pulling her toward the couch like she expected, he led her back to the kitchen island. "Sit," he said gently. She obeyed, curious. From the pantry, he pulled out a basket of fresh strawberries they had bought the day before and began washing them. She watched him in amusement. The Lee Min-ho who was usually effortlessly polished was now carefully hulling strawberries with a butter knife, clearly determined to do it right. "What exactly are you doing?" she asked, stifling a laugh. "Dessert," he said matter-of-factly. "Every celebration needs dessert." When he was done, he arranged the strawberries on a plate in a circle, drizzled a little honey over them, and then, with the flourish of someone serving in a fine restaurant, slid the plate toward her. "For you," he said. She smiled, but instead of taking one, she pushed the plate back to him. "You first," she insisted. He raised an eyebrow, picked up one of the honey-drizzled strawberries, and before she could protest, he leaned in and held it to her lips. She hesitated for a split second before biting into it, the sweetness bursting on her tongue. The way he was looking at her made the strawberry taste even sweeter. "Good?" he asked softly. She nodded, chewing slowly, still holding his gaze. Then she reached for another strawberry and, with the same gentle motion, offered it to him. His eyes never left hers as he took a bite, and in that silent exchange something shifted, as though the morning had deepened into an unspoken promise. After the strawberries, they didn't immediately stand up or rush into the day. Instead, they stayed there, elbows resting on the counter, talking in the kind of low voices people use when the world outside feels far away. He told her about the first time he ever saw her. Not the public red carpet version, but the quiet, off-camera moment when she was laughing with a friend and didn't know anyone was watching. She told him about the little things she notices about him that he doesn't even realize he does. Like how his eyes soften just before he smiles, or how he hums under his breath when he's thinking. It was during that conversation that the idea hit her. "You know what?" she said suddenly. "We should cook together next time." He tilted his head, intrigued. "You want to risk me in the kitchen?" "Yes," she replied with a grin. "Because if you make a mess, I'll still love you." "Dangerous words," he teased. "Now I have to hold you to that." And just like that, they made a pact. That breakfast wouldn't just be something she did for him, but something they would share, mess and all. It wasn't about the perfect omelette or the neatly stacked pancakes anymore. It was about the joy of being together in those quiet morning hours, when the rest of the world was still waking up. By the time noon approached, they had somehow drifted from the kitchen to the couch, wrapped in a blanket, the empty strawberry plate forgotten on the coffee table. She rested her head against his shoulder, and he absent-mindedly played with her hair. Neither of them checked their phones. Neither of them wanted to break the spell. And in that stillness, Lee Min-ho found himself thinking that if every day began like this, with her laughter in his ears and her warmth beside him, he wouldn't need anything else. That morning, lovely viewers, wasn't just about food. It was about the way love can turn something as ordinary as breakfast into something unforgettable. It was about two people realizing that the best kind of happiness isn't loud or showy. It's quiet, it's slow, and it's shared between sips of tea and bites of honey-drizzled strawberries. And for them, it was a beginning of something even deeper.